The desert wind carried whispers of change across the borderlands, where Mexico met the untamed American frontier. It was 1887, and the land stretched endless beneath a merciless sun, dotted with mining camps, sprawling ranches, and the occasional town that dared call itself civilized. Here, fortunes were made in silver and lost at gunpoint, where the law reached only as far as a sheriff's courage allowed. Clara Ashford stood at the window of her father's mansion, watching dust devils dance across the horizon. The house, an absurd monument to Eastern vanity, rose from the desert like a misplaced castle. 3 stories of imported brick and glass. It proclaimed Baron Theodore Ashford's wealth to anyone foolish enough to challenge it. The locals called it Ashford's Folly, though never within earshot of the Baron himself. At 23, Clara possessed the kind of beauty that made men forget their manners and remember their mother's warnings. Her auburn hair caught the afternoon light like spun copper, but it was her eyes, gray as storm clouds over the prairie, that unsettled most. They held too much intelligence for a woman. Her father often complained, too much wildness for a lady. You'll wear a hole in that glass, staring so hard. Martha, her lady's maid, remarked from behind. The older woman's voice carried the gentle reproof of someone who'd raised Clara more than her own mother had. I'm watching for Samuel's carriage. Clara lied smoothly. In truth, she was watching for escape routes, memorizing the patterns of the guards her father had posted since announcing her engagement. Samuel Whitmore. Even thinking his name felt like swallowing sand. The mine owner was 47, with hands that grabbed instead of held, and breath that reeked of cigars and false promises. Her father had sealed the arrangement over brandy and profit margins, selling her future for a merger that would make them the largest silver operation in the territory. Your father expects you downstairs for tea, Martha continued, smoothing Clara's riding dress. A small rebellion she'd managed by claiming the heat made her faint in proper gowns. Mr. Whitmore will be joining you. Clara's fingers tightened on the windowsill. Below, she could see the stable hands preparing her mare. Tempest, the horse, a wedding gift from her late mother, was the only creature in this desert fortress that understood her need to run. The drawing room suffocated with the scent of imported roses, their delicate petals already wilting in the dry heat. Baron Ashford sat in his leather chair like a king holding court, his gray whiskers perfectly waxed, his suit impossibly crisp despite the temperature. Samuel Whitmore occupied the opposite chair, thick fingers drumming against his knee. Clara, her father's voice boomed with false warmth. Come, sit. Samuel has wonderful news about the wedding preparations. She moved with practiced grace, settling into a chair that kept maximum distance between herself and her intended. The tea service, delicate porcelain that had survived the journey from Boston, sat untouched between them. Indeed, Whitmore leaned forward, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her skin crawl. I've arranged for the finest seamstress in San Francisco to create your gown. White silk with pearl buttons. You'll be the envy of every woman in the territory. How thoughtful, Clara managed, her voice carefully neutral. Though I wonder if such finery might seem excessive for a frontier wedding. Her father's eyes narrowed. A warning. Nonsense. The Ashford name demands excellence in all things. The conversation droned on. Guest lists, flower arrangements, the new house Whitmore was building adjacent to his largest mine. Clara responded when required, her mind elsewhere. Through the window, she could see riders approaching from the south, their horses kicking up clouds of amber dust. Father, she interrupted, seizing an opportunity. I believe those are your expected guests from the railroad company. Both men turned to look, and she rose smoothly. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, this heat has given me quite the headache. Before either could protest, she swept from the room, gathering her skirts to climb the stairs 2 at a time. Martha waited in her room, already holding her riding gloves. You can't keep running forever, child, the older woman said softly. I'm not running. Clara pulled on the gloves with sharp, efficient movements. "I'm breathing." The stable was dim and cool, smelling of hay and leather. Tempest nickered softly as Clara approached, the mare's dark eyes reflecting understanding. The stable boy, barely 16, jumped when he saw her. "Miss Clara, your father said—" "My father is occupied with business," she said, already leading Tempest from her stall. "I'll only be an hour." It was a lie. Once she cleared the compound walls, Clara turned Tempest toward the mountains. The mare, bred for endurance, stretched into a gallop that ate up the desert miles. Here, with the wind tearing at her carefully pinned hair and the vast emptiness spreading before her, Clara finally felt her lungs expand fully. She'd discovered the hidden canyon 3 months ago, a slice of green paradise fed by an underground spring. Ancient cottonwoods provided shade, their leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. It had become her sanctuary, the only place where the walls couldn't close in. But as Tempest picked her way down the narrow trail, Clara sensed something different. Fresh horse tracks marked the sandy soil, several riders, recent enough that the edges remained sharp. Her hand moved instinctively to the small pistol she kept in her saddlebag, a gift from a sympathetic ranch hand who'd taught her to shoot. The clearing appeared empty, but Clara had learned to read the desert's deceptions. She dismounted slowly, leading Tempest to the spring while her eyes scanned the shadows between the rocks. "That's a fine horse for a lady to be riding alone." The voice came from above and to her left. Clara's hand found her pistol as she turned, finding a man perched on a boulder like a hawk surveying prey. He wore the clothes of a working man, worn leather chaps, a dust-colored shirt, a hat pulled low over his face. But the way he held himself, the casual rest of his hand near the colt on his hip, marked him as something else entirely. "I'm armed," she said, proud when her voice didn't shake. "So I see." He shifted, and sunlight caught his face. Dark hair, darker eyes, and a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. "Question is, can you use it? Would you like a demonstration?" He laughed, a sound like whiskey over gravel. "No need. Miss, I believe you." He dropped from the rock with fluid grace, keeping his hands visible. "Jessie Blackthorne, and you'd be the Baron's daughter." The name hit her like cold water. Jessie Blackthorne, former Confederate soldier turned outlaw, with a bounty on his head that could buy a small ranch. The newspapers painted him as a monster who robbed stages and murdered without conscience. But the man before her moved with careful precision, his eyes holding intelligence rather than madness. "You know who I am," she said. Not quite a question. "Every soul within 100 miles knows about Clara Ashford." He moved to his own horse, a raw-boned gelding hidden in the cottonwood shade. The beautiful bird in the gilded cage, set to marry Samuel Whitmore. "I'm no one's bird." "No," he agreed, studying her with uncomfortable intensity. "I reckon you're not." They stood in strange tableau, the outlaw and the lady, predator and prey, though Clara couldn't say which was which. The spring gurgled between them, marking time in liquid notes. "I should go," she finally said. "Should you?" He tilted his head. "Seems to me you came here looking for something, same as me. And what are you looking for, Mr. Blackthorne?" "Silence," he said simply. "Place where the ghosts can't howl so loud." The honesty of it caught her off guard. She'd expected threats, perhaps crude demands for money or worse, not this quiet admission of pain. "And you, Miss Ashford, what sends a baron's daughter riding alone into outlaw territory?" "Escape," she admitted, matching his honesty. "Even if it's just for an hour." He nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Hour's almost up. I'd wager your father keeps a tight watch on his investments." The word investment sparked anger in her chest. "I'm his daughter, not his property." "So, in these parts, that's a distinction without much difference." Jessie moved toward his horse. "Best you head back. Miss, this canyon's about to get crowded. Got business coming through that wouldn't appreciate witnesses." Clara knew she should be frightened. Instead, she felt oddly disappointed. "You're robbing someone. Railroad payroll." he confirmed without shame. Though robbing is such an ugly word, I prefer redistributing wealth. To yourself? To those the war left with nothing while men like Whitmore got fat on their suffering. His voice carried an edge now, sharp as the knife at his belt. But that's not your concern. She mounted Tempest, gathering the reins. At the canyon entrance, she paused. Will you kill them? The guards? Only if they make me. He touched his hat brim, a gentleman's gesture that seemed strange from an outlaw. Ride fast, Miss Ashford, and forget you saw me. But as Clara urged Tempest back toward her prison, she knew forgetting Jessie Blackthorne would be impossible. He'd looked at her and seen not the Baron's daughter or Whitmore's prize, but a woman seeking freedom in those dark eyes. She'd glimpsed a kindred spirit, another soul trapped by circumstances, seeking silence from demons that wouldn't rest. The mansion rose before her as the sun began its descent, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Guards rushed forward as she approached, their relief evident. Her father would be furious, would likely restrict her riding privileges further. But as Clara surrendered Tempest to the stable hands and prepared to face the consequences, she carried a secret like an ember in her chest. The canyon, the outlaw, the promise of something beyond these walls that sought to define her. She didn't know then that Jessie Blackthorne would soon give her more than a moment's escape. She didn't know that their paths would cross again in violence and desperation, that the choice between cage and canyon would cost blood and tears. All she knew was that for one brief moment, she'd tasted real freedom, and like the desert after rain, she thirsted for more. The engagement party glittered with false splendor, Chinese lanterns casting dancing shadows across the courtyard. Clara stood trapped between her father and Samuel Whitmore, wearing a gown of midnight blue that felt more like armor than silk. The cream of territorial society had gathered, mine owners, cattle barons, even a federal judge who'd traveled from Tucson. They circled like vultures, offering congratulations that tasted of calculation. You must be so happy. Mrs. Wellington cooed, her diamonds catching the light. Such an advantageous match. Clara's smile could have etched glass. Indeed, every woman dreams of being advantageous. Whitmore's hand found the small of her back, possessive and damp through the fabric. My bride has quite the wit, he said, though his tone suggested this was not entirely a compliment. I'm sure marriage will temper it appropriately. The orchestra, imported from Denver for the occasion, struck up another waltz. Clara endured another turn around the floor, Whitmore's breath hot against her ear as he spoke of honeymoon plans that made her stomach turn. Through the swirling couples, she caught Martha's eye. The older woman stood near the terrace doors, a subtle signal they'd arranged. Excuse me. Clara pressed a hand to her forehead as the music ended. I need some air. The desert air is harsh at night. Whitmore protested. Allow me to. I'll only be a moment. She slipped away before he could follow, weaving through the crowd toward the terrace. Martha intercepted Whitmore with a question about the wedding breakfast, giving Clara precious seconds. The night air hit her like salvation. She gulped it down, moved quickly along the terrace toward the servants' stairs. Her escape route, planned for weeks, change of clothes hidden in the gardener's shed. Tempest saddled and waiting in the grove beyond the walls. She'd made it halfway down the stairs when shouts erupted from the main road. Gunfire cracked through the night, sharp and sudden. The party descended into chaos, women screaming, men reaching for weapons they'd left with the coat check. Through the confusion, Clara heard her father's voice booming orders to secure the house. She should have gone back, should have played the frightened daughter. Instead, she hiked up her skirts and ran for the grove. Whatever was happening on the road had drawn the guards away from their posts. The gods of chance had given her a gift. Tempest waited as promised, stamping nervously at the sound of gunfire. Clara struggled out of the ball gown, grateful for the practical riding clothes beneath, another small rebellion she'd managed. The shooting intensified as she mounted, accompanied now by the thunder of hooves. She'd just cleared the grove when riders burst from the darkness. 3 men, faces covered by bandanas, horses lathered with sweat. One carried bulging saddlebags that clinked with the distinctive sound of gold coins. They nearly collided with her, horses rearing and wheeling in the moonlight. "Well, hell," one of the riders said, and Clara recognized the voice like whiskey over gravel. Jesse Blackthorne pulled down his bandana, revealing a face streaked with dust and someone else's blood. "Miss Ashford, you do have interesting timing." "Let me pass," she said, fighting to control Tempest as the mare danced sideways. "Can't do that." Jesse's eyes flicked back toward the road where pursuit was surely forming. "See, in about 2 minutes, this place is going to be crawling with men looking for us. They find you out here, dressed like that, running in the night. What do you think happens to your reputation?" "I don't care about my reputation." "Maybe not, but you care about that horse." He gestured to one of his men who'd drawn a rifle. "Tom here's a crack shot. Be ashamed to leave such fine bloodstock for the coyotes." "You wouldn't?" "I've done worse for less." But something in his eyes suggested otherwise. "Here's what's going to happen. You're coming with us, nice and quiet. Few hours, maybe a day. Then I let you go. My father will. Your father will think we took you. Might even save your hide when they find out you were running." Jesse wheeled his horse closer. "Choose fast, princess. Stay and explain why you're out here. Or ride and let them think you're a victim." The sound of approaching hooves made the choice for her. Jesse reached out, grabbed Tempest's reins, and spurred his horse into motion. Clara had no choice but to follow as they plunged into the desert darkness, leaving the lights of her father's house behind like dying stars. They rode hard through terrain that would have been treacherous in daylight. Jesse led with the confidence of a man who'd mapped every rock and ravine, pushing the horses to their limits. Clara bent low over Tempest's neck, her world reduced to the thunder of hooves and the taste of dust. The other riders, Tom and a younger man Jesse called Billy, flanked her like guards, or captors. The distinction blurred as the miles passed. They changed direction several times, splashing through a shallow creek to break their trail, climbing into the foothills where pursuit would struggle to follow. Dawn was painting the eastern sky purple when Jesse finally slowed. They'd reached a box canyon, its entrance hidden by a fall of rocks that looked natural until you saw how perfectly they concealed the path. The horses picked their way through, sides heaving, coats dark with sweat. "Down," Jesse ordered, dismounting with a groan that suggested injuries he'd been hiding. Blood had soaked through his shirt near his ribs. Clara slid from Tempest, her legs barely holding her. Every muscle screamed protest from the brutal ride. Around her, the canyon walls rose like prison bars made of stone. "Bring her," Jesse told Tom, already moving toward what looked like a cave entrance. "Billy, see to the horses, and for God's sake, make sure we weren't followed." Tom gestured with his rifle, not quite pointing it at her. But the message was clear. Clara followed Jesse into the shadows, from one captivity to another. The cave opened into a natural chamber, larger than she'd expected. Supplies lined one wall, crates of ammunition, sacks of grain, medical supplies stolen from who knew where. Bedrolls scattered around a fire pit suggested this was a regular hideout. Jesse collapsed onto a wooden crate, pressing a hand to his side. "You're hurt," Clara observed. Observant. He pulled off his vest, revealing a shirt soaked with blood. "One of Whitmore's guards got lucky." "Whitmore's guards?" Understanding dawned cold. "You robbed my engagement party?" "Robbed the payroll wagon heading to your engagement party," Jesse corrected. Teeth gritted as he tried to examine the wound. "All that gold your daddy's friends brought to celebrate your marriage, seemed fitting to redistribute it. You planned this. You knew I'd be—" She stopped, another realization hitting. "The canyon. Yesterday, you were scouting. Among other things." He gave up trying to tend the wound himself, slumping back. "Tom, get the medical kit." "Unless Miss Ashford wants to watch me bleed out." Tom hesitated. "Jesse, I don't think—" "Get it," as Tom rummaged through supplies. Clara studied her captor. In the lamplight, she could see the lines pain had carved around his eyes, the gray threading through his dark hair. The scar she'd noticed yesterday stood out pale against his tanned skin. "Why?" she asked. "Why take me?" Jesse's laugh turned into a cough. "Would you believe me if I said it was for your own good?" "No." "Smart woman." Tom returned with a battered medical kit. Jesse waved him away. "Go help Billy. Make sure our trail's cold." When they were alone, Jesse struggled with his shirt buttons. His hands shook, blood loss or exhaustion or both. Clara watched him struggle for a moment before her mother's training overrode her anger. "Let me," she said, moving forward. "Regular Florence Nightingale. Are you?" "I've tended injured horses. You can't be much different." But her hands were gentle as she helped him out of the ruined shirt. The wound was a deep graze along his ribs, bleeding steady but not the arterial spray that meant death. "Bullet?" she asked, opening the medical kit. "Knife. Guard got close before I put him down." He winced as she cleaned the wound with whiskey from a bottle that appeared at his elbow. "Didn't kill him, if that matters to you." "Should it?" "You tell me." His eyes found hers, dark and unreadable. "Does it matter to you who bleeds for your freedom?" She didn't answer, focusing on the task. The cave fell silent except for his harsh breathing and the distant sound of the horses. His skin was marked by more than just this wound. Scars told stories of violence survived, a map of a hard life written in flesh. "There," she said finally, tying off the bandage. "Try not to tear it open again. I'll do my best." He reached for a clean shirt. Movements careful. "There's food in those sacks, water in the barrels. Make yourself comfortable, princess. You're going to be here a while." "How long?" "Until your daddy stops looking in the right places. Day or two, maybe 3. He studied her face. "Unless you want to go back now, I could leave you somewhere, let you walk home. Tell them any story you want." The offer hung between them like a challenge. Go back to Whitmore's grabbing hands, to a wedding that would seal her fate, to a life measured in someone else's profits, or stay here in this cave with outlaws, branded a victim or worse, but alive in a way she'd never been allowed. "I suppose," Clara said slowly. "A day or two won't matter. My reputation's already ruined just by being here. Practical. I like that." Jesse stretched out on one of the bedrolls. Gun within easy reach. "Get some sleep. Miss Ashford, Tom will bring you breakfast when the sun's full up." She found a relatively clean bedroll in the corner, exhaustion weighing down her limbs, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, she lay listening to the cave's breathing, Jesse's steady rhythm, the drip of water somewhere deeper in the stone, the whisper of wind through the entrance. She'd run from one cage only to find another, but this one, rough stone and outlaw company, felt more honest than all the gilt and crystal of her father's world. Here, at least, the bars were visible. Here, at least, she was valuable for more than her name and breeding. As dawnlight crept into the cave, Clara made a decision that would have horrified her proper mother. She wouldn't try to escape, not yet. Let them think her a captive, a victim of circumstance. The truth that she'd found a strange freedom in this forced captivity would be her secret. Jesse Blackthorne had given her an unexpected gift. Time. Time away from Whitmore, from wedding plans, from the suffocating expectations that pressed down like desert heat. Time to think, to plan, to discover who Clara Ashford might be when she wasn't anyone's daughter, anyone's bride, anyone's property. She closed her eyes, letting exhaustion finally claim her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices. But tonight, in an outlaw's cave with her fine dress discarded and her hair wild with wind, Clara slept better than she had in months. The cage had changed, but for the first time in her life, she could see the door. Clara woke to the sound of silence so complete it pressed against her eardrums. No servants bustling in the halls, no father's booming voice demanding attendance, no ticking of imported clocks marking time in someone else's rhythm. Just the deep quiet of stone and earth, broken only by the distant drip of water and the soft snore of a man who'd learned to sleep light. The cave held a different quality in full daylight. Shafts of sun penetrated cracks in the rock, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. The main chamber stretched larger than she'd realized, with passages leading deeper into the mountain's heart. Along one wall, someone had built rough shelves holding books, unexpected treasures in an outlaw's den. Jesse still slept on his bedroll, one hand resting on his Colt, in repose. The hard lines of his face softened, making him look younger than the 30-odd years she'd guessed. The bandage she'd applied showed spots of blood, but nothing fresh. He'd survive, though he'd likely add another scar to his collection. Tom sat near the entrance, rifle across his knees, chewing tobacco with the patience of a man used to long watches. He nodded when he saw her awake, but made no move to speak. The silence wrapped around them like a living thing. Clara rose, working out the stiffness from sleeping on stone. Her riding clothes were dusty and torn from the night's wild flight, but they granted more freedom than any silk gown. She moved to the shelves, running her fingers across the book spines. Shakespeare, surprisingly, Milton, a Bible with pages worn soft from handling, and tucked between them, dime novels about cowboys and Indians, their lurid covers at odds with the literary company. My mother taught me to read. Jesse's voice came soft from behind her. She turned to find him sitting up, watching her with those dark eyes that seemed to hold midnight. Before the war, said a man who couldn't read was only half alive. She sounds wise. She was. The past tense carried weight. Burned with the rest when Sherman's boys came through Georgia. Clara had heard tales of the march to the sea, the swath of destruction that ended the Confederacy's hope. But hearing it personal, seeing the old pain flicker across Jesse's face, made history immediate. "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it. "Long time ago." He stood, movements careful around his injury. "Tom, any word from Billy?" "Not yet." "Want me to go looking?" "No, he'll be back." Jesse moved to the water barrel, splashing his face. "Miss Ashford's probably hungry. There's jerky and hardtack in that crate. Some canned peaches if you're feeling fancy." It wasn't the breakfast she was used to, but Clara found herself oddly hungry. She ate standing, watching Jesse move about the cave with economical grace. He checked weapons, counted ammunition, all while maintaining that sphere of quiet that seemed to follow him. "Why here?" she asked finally. "This place." He paused in cleaning his rifle. "You always ask this many questions?" "When I'm being held captive, yes." A smile ghosted across his lips. "Fair enough." He gestured to the cave walls. "Apache showed me this place, years back. Sacred to them. See those paintings?" Clara looked closer, noticing faded figures in red ochre dancing across the stone. Warriors and animals, suns and spirals, stories told in pictures older than memory. "They say the mountain holds spirits," Jesse continued. "That's why it's so quiet. Even the wind respects the dead." "Do you believe that?" "I believe in quiet." He went back to his rifle. "After the war, noise was all I could hear. Cannons, screams, the buzz of flies on—" He stopped. "This place gave me silence. First real silence since before Fort Sumter." Billy appeared at the entrance, horse-lathered and eyes wide. "Jesse, we got problems. Posse's coming up from the south, maybe dozen men, and that ain't the worst of it." Jesse was already reaching for his gun belt. "What else?" "Comancheros. Spotted their dust to the west. Heading this way. Miguel Sandoval's bunch, from the look of it." The name made Tom spit. "That bastard! Thought the Rangers drove him into Mexico." "Apparently he's back." Jesse's face had gone hard. The contemplative man of moments ago replaced by the outlaw who'd survived this long by being faster and smarter than those who hunted him. "How long?" "Posse's maybe 3 hours out. Comancheros, hard to say. They weren't pushing hard. They know about the take. Word travels." Billy's eyes flicked to Clara. "They also know about her?" The silence that followed had a different quality. Not peaceful, but taut as a bowstring. Clara understood enough. Comancheros were the worst of both worlds, trading with Indians for captives and guns, preying on anyone weak enough to rob. If they knew Jesse had gold and a woman— "We move," Jesse decided. "Tom, get the horses ready. Billy, help me with the essential supplies. We cache the rest. Come back when it's clear." "What about her?" Tom jerked his head toward Clara. Jesse looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "She rides with us." "Jesse!" Tom's voice carried warning. "She'll slow us down. Might be better to—" "To what?" Jesse's hand moved to his gun. "Leave her for Sandoval? Shoot her so she can't talk?" He shook his head. "We're outlaws, not animals." "She rides with us." They moved with practiced efficiency, transforming the lived-in cave to an empty hole in minutes. Supplies disappeared into hidden caches. False walls Clara hadn't noticed. The books went into an oilcloth bundle that Jesse handled with surprising care. "Can you shoot?" he asked her, holding out a spare revolver. "Yes." "Good. Stay close to me. If shooting starts, keep low and don't try to be a hero." He checked the loads, handed it over. "And Miss Ashford? If you're thinking this is your chance to run, remember, the posse will shoot first and check your identity later. Sandoval's men won't even bother with shooting if they take you alive." The implication chilled her more than the cave's shadows. She nodded, tucking the gun into her waistband. Strange how quickly the outlaws had become the safer option. They led the horses out through the hidden entrance, Jesse moving stiff but determined. The noon sun hit like a hammer after the cave's coolness. Mountains stretched in every direction, beautiful and merciless. "Where?" Tom asked, scanning the horizon. "North," Jesse decided. "Into the high country, harder trailing. But Sandoval's men are plains riders. They won't like the altitude." They mounted and moved out, keeping to ridge lines where possible. Jesse led, choosing paths that seemed invisible until he showed them. Clara rode between him and Tom, Billy bringing up the rear. The silence of the cave followed them, but now it felt watchful rather than peaceful. An hour in, Jesse raised his hand. Far below, dust clouds marked riders moving fast through a valley, even at distance. Clara could see they weren't wearing uniforms. The Comancheros rode loose and wild, like a pack of human wolves. "Will they find the cave?" she asked quietly. "Eventually." Jesse watched them pass below, his expression carved from stone. "But it won't tell them where we went." They pushed higher, the air thinning, the horses laboring. Jesse's bandage showed fresh red, but he said nothing. The landscape changed from desert to pine forest, the temperature dropping despite the sun. Here, patches of snow lingered in shadows, last remnants of winter refusing to yield. There, Jesse pointed to a cluster of rocks that formed a natural fortification. "We'll rest the horses." They dismounted, Tom immediately taking watch position. Billy saw to the horses while Jesse sat heavily on a boulder, face gray beneath his tan. Clara brought him water from her canteen. "You're bleeding again. Notice that." He drank deep, some color returning. "Thank you." "For what?" "Not running, not screaming, not being what I expected a baron's daughter to be." "What did you expect?" "Tears, hysteria, demands to be returned immediately to Daddy." He studied her face. "Instead, you tend wounds and ride like someone born to the saddle. Makes a man wonder what other surprises you're hiding." Before Clara could respond, Tom whistled low. "Riders, coming up our back trail." Jesse was on his feet instantly, telescope in hand. After a long moment, he lowered it. "Posse, they're following our trail." He calculated distances. "Options. Hour, maybe less. We can't outrun them," Billy said. "Not with tired horses." "No." Jesse looked at Clara, decision crystallizing in his eyes. "But we can misdirect them." He turned to Tom. "Take Miss Ashford. Head east toward Eagle's Roost. Leave obvious trail for half a mile. Then double back through that stream we crossed. Meet us at the old mine shaft." "Jesse, do it." His voice brooked no argument. "Billy and I will lead them north. Make them think we're all together. When we split, they'll follow us. We've got the gold." Clara understood. "You're using yourself as bait. It's what I do best." He caught Tempest's reins, handed them to Tom. Keep her safe. That's not a request. Tom's face showed he wanted to argue, but years of following Jesse's lead won. Come on, miss. We need to move. As Clara mounted, Jesse caught her stirrup. That revolver I gave you? If Tom tries anything ungentlemanly, shoot him. He knows I mean it. I wouldn't, Tom protested. I know, but she needed to hear it. Jesse stepped back. Ride hard, princess. With luck. I'll see you at sunset. They separated, Clara following Tom east while Jesse and Billy continued north. Looking back, she saw Jesse slumped in his saddle as if barely holding on, bait to make the posse push harder. The last image burned into her memory. An injured outlaw riding into danger to protect a woman he'd kidnapped, chased by men who'd hang him given the chance. The silence of the mountains swallowed them all, and Clara rode toward an uncertain sunset, carrying the weight of an outlaw's trust and the echo of her own wildly beating heart. The cage had become a labyrinth, and she no longer knew if she was prisoner or partner in this desperate dance across the borderlands. But she knew one thing with certainty that surprised her. She hoped Jesse Blackthorne would live to see that sunset he'd promised. Retried. The old mine shaft squatted against the mountainside like a wound that wouldn't heal. Tom led Clara through the gathering dusk, their horses picking careful paths between rusted equipment and collapsed timber. The place breathed abandonment, tools left where they'd fallen when the silver played out, dreams calcified into rust. In here, Tom dismounted, leading his horse into what had once been an equipment shed. The roof leaked starlight through holes, but the walls stood solid. Jesse'll find us if he's coming. That if hung heavy between them. Clara sought a Tempest, her hand steady despite the knot in her stomach. 3 hours since they'd separated. 3 hours of hard riding, stream crossings, false trails. 3 hours of not knowing if Jesse and Billy had survived their decoy run. He's smart, Tom said, maybe reading her thoughts. Been getting out of tighter spots than this since before I joined up. How long have you ridden with him? 4 years. Tom pulled out his tobacco pouch, the familiar ritual seeming to calm him. Found me in a Tucson jail, waiting to hang for a shooting that was self-defense. Jesse broke me out, been following him since... Why? Tom considered this, working his jaw around the tobacco. Most outlaws, they're in it for the money or the thrill. Jesse's different. He's got... Tom searched for words. Purpose, I guess, like he's fighting a war that never ended. Clara understood. She'd seen that quality in Jesse's eyes, the weight of someone carrying more than his own story. The war broke many men, broke them different ways. Tom spat into the dust. Some turned mean, some turned drunk. Jesse turned focused. Every rich man's dollar he takes. It's like he's evening some cosmic scale. And you believe in this cause? I believe in him. Simple as that. Tom checked his rifle for the 10th time. Man saves your life. You owe him. Man gives your life meaning after you thought it was over. That's a debt you can't repay. Footsteps outside made them both reach for weapons, but it was Billy's voice that called soft. Tom, you in there? The young outlaw appeared, leading both horses, alone. Clara's heart dropped even as Tom asked, Jesse? Coming. Had to circle wide. Posse picked up our trail good. Billy's face was haggard with exhaustion. He's hurt worse. That riding opened everything up again. They heard him before they saw him. The scrape of boots trying to find purchase. The harsh breathing of a man at his limits. Jesse appeared in the doorway and would have fallen if Tom hadn't caught him. Blood soaked his entire left side. The bandages Clara had applied now useless red rags. Get him down, she ordered, her mother's training overriding everything else. Billy, I need water, clean cloth, whatever medical supplies you have. Tom, help me with his shirt. Jesse tried to protest, but the words came out slurred. The wound had torn open completely, and riding had made it worse. Infection was setting in. She could see the angry red streaks spreading from the wound, feel the fever heat radiating from his skin. Posse, Tom asked as they worked. Lost them at Cathedral Rocks. Jesse managed. But they'll Pick up the trail come morning. Sandoval's boys are still out there too. Clara cleaned the wound with whiskey, causing Jessie to arch in pain. This needs proper stitching. Thread? In my saddlebags. Jessie gasped. Needle too. Old habit. She found the kit, hands steady as she threaded the needle. This will hurt. Can't hurt worse than... He bit off the words as she began, muscles rigid with the effort not to scream. Tom held him down while Billy kept watch. Clara worked by feel and instinct, closing the wound with small, careful stitches her mother had taught her on kitchen accidents and hunting injuries. There! She tied off the last stitch, exhaustion making her hands tremble at last. You need rest, real rest, not just an hour here and there. I'll rest when I'm dead. But Jesse's eyes were already closing, his body overruling his will. They made him as comfortable as possible on a bedroll. Clara sat beside him, monitoring his breathing. The fever worried her more than the wound. Without proper medicine, without clean conditions, infection could kill him as surely as any bullet. Someone needs to keep watch. Tom said, I'll take first. Billy offered. You've both been riding longer. Tom nodded, settling against the wall where he could see both entrances. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. Youth and exhaustion claimed Billy next, his watch lasting barely an hour before he dozed at his post. Clara remained awake, watching Jesse's restless sleep. He muttered words she couldn't catch, fighting battles in dreams. Once, he called for his mother. Another time, a woman's name, Sarah, spoken with such longing it made her chest tight. Near midnight, his eyes opened, focused with effort on her face. You're still here. Where would I go? Home. Take Tempest and ride hard. You could make your father's ranch by dawn. Is that what you want, for me to leave? He was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen back asleep. Then, soft as the desert wind. No. Then stop trying to noble yourself to death. She wrung out a cloth, placed it on his burning forehead. You saved my life today. The least I can do is return the favor. Saved your life? A ghost of his usual smile. Princess, I kidnapped you. You kept me from Sandoval's men. You could have left me, used me as a distraction. Tom told me outlaws have done worse for less. I told you that. You say many things. Not all of them true. She studied his face in the moonlight. Why did you really take me from the party? Jesse's eyes found hers, the fever making him honest. Because I saw you in that canyon, really saw you. A wild thing pretending to be tame, dying inside all that silk and propriety. I've been there, wearing a uniform that didn't fit, fighting a war I didn't choose. Nobody should live in a cage. So you put me in a different one. Did I? He struggled to sit up, failing. Look around. Clara, no walls here but what you build yourself. You could have run a dozen times today. Why didn't you? She didn't answer because the truth frightened her. Somewhere between that first wild ride and this moment, watching him bleed for strangers' assumptions about honor, she'd stopped wanting to run. The realization terrified her more than any Comanchero. The books, she said instead, changing the subject. You saved them from the cave. Why? Man without books is just an animal with opinions. Jesse's smile was wan but real. My mother again. She read to us every night, even when the only light was tallow candles. Shakespeare and the Bible. Byron when father wasn't listening. Words were the only beautiful things that couldn't be taken away. Until they burned. No. He touched his temple. Still here. She walks in beauty, like the night, of cloudless climes and starry skies. See? Can't burn what lives in here. Clara found herself smiling. A poetry quoting outlaw. What would the newspapers make of that? Nothing that would sell papers. People want their villains simple. His eyes started to drift closed again. Stay, Clara, just stay. She stayed. Through the fever dreams and the chills, through Tom and Billy's rotating watches, through the long night's journey toward dawn. She bathed Jesse's face, forced water between his lips, held him down when delirium made him fight invisible enemies. Near dawn, the fever broke. Jesse's breathing eased, his skin cooling to normal warmth. He slept deep and honest, the kind of rest that knits body and soul. Clara finally allowed exhaustion to claim her, curling on a blanket near his bedroll. She woke to voices in heated discussion. Can't stay here," Tom was saying. "Posse will pick up our trail at first light. Jesse can't ride." Billy argued. "You seen him? He needs days, not hours. We don't have days. Best we can do is find somewhere more defensible. Wait it out. With what food? What water? We cached everything at the cave." Clara sat up, both men turning to her. Jesse still slept, but his color was better, breathing even. "There's another option," she said quietly. "Let me go. I'll ride down. Tell them I escaped. Lead them away from here." "Jesse would skin us alive," Tom said immediately. "Jesse's not making decisions right now." Clara stood, brushing dust from her clothes. "Think about it. They're not really after me. They want him. If I show up with a story about escaping while you fought the posse, they'll believe it. I'm just a woman, after all. What could I know about covering trails?" Billy looked hopeful, but Tom shook his head. "You don't know Jesse like I do. Man would rather hang than break his word. He said keep you safe. That's what we do." "Safe?" Clara laughed, bitter. "I'm sitting in a mine shaft with 3 wanted men, surrounded by posses and Comancheros. How is that safe? Safer than with Whitmore." The voice came weak but clear. Jesse's eyes were open, focused despite the pain. "Tom's right. You stay. You're fevered." Clara protested, not thinking clearly. Thinking clear enough, he struggled to sit, accepting Tom's help. "You ride down there. What happens? Back to your father, back to Whitmore, back to a wedding you were running from. That what you want? What I want doesn't matter. Like hell." The profanity sparked something in his eyes. "What you want is the only thing that matters. That's what freedom means. Choosing your own way, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard." Fine words from a man who kidnapped me. "Fair point." He managed a smile. "So I'm giving you a choice now. Stay or go. But choose honest, not because it's practical or safe or what someone expects. Choose what you want." Clara looked around the ruined shaft, at these men who lived outside law and comfort, looked at Jesse, wounded and wanted but more alive than any man in her father's parlor, looked at the dawn breaking through holes in the roof, painting everything in shades of possibility. "I want to stay," she admitted. "God help me, I want to stay." Jesse nodded as if he'd expected nothing else. "Then we'd best figure out how to keep us all alive. Tom, what's our water situation?" They spent the morning planning, and for the first time since her capture, Clara felt like a participant rather than a prisoner. She contributed ideas, challenged assumptions, earning surprised respect from Tom and Billy. When Jesse needed rebandaging, she did it without being asked. When they shared their meager food, she ate without complaint. By noon, they decided to move higher into the mountains, toward an old Apache camp Jesse knew. It would be hard travel, especially with his injuries, but staying meant certain capture. As they prepared to leave, Jesse caught Clara's arm. "You sure about this? Last chance to change your mind. I've made my choice." She met his eyes steady. "Have you made yours?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not your prisoner anymore. Haven't been since you put yourself between me and danger." "So what am I?" "Jessie Blackthorne." He studied her face. This Baron's daughter who stitched wounds and rode like a vaquero. "You're free, Clara Ashford. Free to stay, free to go, free to be whatever you choose. That's all any of us can offer. The freedom to choose." She nodded, understanding passing between them deeper than words. When they rode out of the mine shaft into uncertain afternoon, Clara rode beside Jesse as an equal, a partner in this strange dance between law and liberty. The mountains rose before them, promising hardship and possibly death. But for the first time in her life, Clara faced the future with eyes wide open, choosing each step of the path ahead. The cage had become a doorway, and she'd walked through it into a world where wanting and having might finally meet. The Apache camp nestled in a high valley where eagles dared to nest, sheltered by peaks that scraped the belly of heaven. They'd climbed for 2 days through paths that existed more in Jesse's memory than reality, leaving the desert's heat for thin air that burned the lungs. Now, as storm clouds gathered like a war council, Clara understood why Jesse chose this place. No posse of flatland riders would follow them here. The camp consisted of 3 wickiups, their frames still solid though the covering had long rotted away. Jesse directed repairs with an economy of words, his strength returning slowly. Clara worked alongside the men, her hands growing calloused from handling pine boughs and leather cording. When Tom expressed surprise at her knowledge of knots, she merely smiled. A lady has her secrets. By nightfall, they'd made one shelter habitable. The storm hit just as they finished. Turning the world white with driven snow, they huddled around a small fire, listening to wind howl through the peaks like all the ghosts of the frontier. First snow of the season, Billy observed. Early for October. Mountain weather, Jesse said. Could pass by morning, could last a week. The possibility hung between them. A week trapped here, supplies running low, no way down if Jesse's wound turned bad again, but also a week hidden from those who hunted them, wrapped in nature's own protection. Tell us about her, Clara said suddenly. Sarah. Jesse's head came up sharp. What? You called for her. During the fever. Clara kept her voice neutral, curious rather than accusatory. Someone you lost. Tom and Billy exchanged glances. Whatever Jesse's history with this Sarah, it wasn't commonly shared, but perhaps the mountain's isolation, the storm's voice, or Clara's steady gaze loosened something in him. My wife, he said finally. Dead these 7 years. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing across his face. Clara waited, having learned that Jesse's silences often preceded his truths. Met her in Virginia, before the war. Her father owned the farm next to ours. Proper people, not like my family. We were... He smiled at memory. Poor but proud. My mother used to say. Sarah didn't care. Used to sneak out to meet me by the creek, bringing books she thought I'd like. You married young, Clara observed. 18 and 19. Week before I enlisted. Thought I'd be gone 6 months at most. Come back a hero. His laugh held no humor. 4 years later, I came back to ashes. Farm burned, family dead. Sarah. He stopped, staring into the fire. Tom picked up the story, voice gentle. Bushwhackers got her, wanting to punish Jesse for riding with Mosby's Rangers. Made sure he knew it was personal. I'm sorry, Clara said, understanding now the depth of pain that drove him. Is that why you robbed the men who got rich while we bled? Jesse's voice hardened. Partly. Also because I'm good at it. And because they deserve it. And because what else is a man like me supposed to do? Can't farm ashes? Can't bring back the dead. You could start over. Go west. Change your name. Could I? He looked at her direct. You think changing a name changes what's inside? You think calling yourself something else would make you not Baron Ashford's daughter? The question hit close to home. These past days, she'd imagined being someone else, a frontier woman, a rancher's wife, anything but the commodity her father traded. But Jesse was right. The past followed like a shadow at noon. Then we're all trapped, she said. You by your ghosts, me by my blood. Maybe, Jesse shifted, wincing. Or maybe the trap's just another illusion. Maybe we're already free and too scared to see it. Billy yawned, enormous. Philosophy's well and good, but I'm about ready to sleep. Who's taking first watch? They settled into routine, the storm wrapping them in a cocoon of white noise. Clara took second watch, rifle across her knees, staring out at the nothing beyond the Wikiup's entrance. The world had shrunk to this circle of firelight, these 3 outlaws who'd shown her more honest kindness than most lawful men. Near dawn, she heard movement outside, not the wind, something deliberate, careful. She cocked the rifle, about to wake the others, when a figure materialized from the snow. An old Apache, wrapped in a blanket that made him nearly invisible against the white. He studied her with eyes like polished obsidian. "Jessie Blackthorne," he said, the name accented but clear. Clara kept the rifle steady. "He's sleeping. Wake him." Something in the old man's tone brooked no argument. Clara reached back, touched Jesse's shoulder. He came awake instantly, hand on his gun, then relaxed when he saw their visitor. "Joseph," he said, sitting up careful of his wound. "Been a long time. Long enough." The Apache entered, shaking snow from his blanket. Up close, Clara could see the years etched deep in his face, the weight of watching his world disappear. "You bring trouble to this place. I bring myself. Trouble just follows." Joseph's eyes found Clara. "This is the woman the white men seek? The Baron's daughter." "How do you—" Clara started, but Jesse raised a hand. "Joseph knows everything that happens in these mountains. His people have been watching us since we arrived." "My people." Joseph spat into the fire. 6 families left, hidden in the canyons. Once we were many. He studied Clara again. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Tears, fear, demands to be rescued." A smile creased his weathered face. "Instead, you keep watch like a warrior." "Interesting." He turned back to Jesse. "The men hunting you have made camp at Twin Rocks. 20 riders, well armed. They wait for the storm to clear. Then they come." "How long?" "Tomorrow, maybe next day. The storm weakens." Joseph pulled something from beneath his blanket. A leather pouch, heavy with powder. "For your wound. Sarah taught me its making. I returned the knowledge." Jesse's face changed at the name. "You knew? I know she lives with the Great Spirit now, waiting." Joseph placed the pouch in Jesse's hands with ceremony. "As my Mary waits, as all the lost ones wait, but we are not meant to join them yet." Tom and Billy had woken, watching this exchange with surprise. Joseph noticed them, nodded acknowledgement, then returned his attention to Jesse. "There is another matter. The Mexican, Sandoval. He has taken the Murphy family. Father, mother, 2 daughters. They camp at Skeleton Canyon, planning to cross the border tomorrow." The temperature in the wickiup seemed to drop further. Clara had heard whispers of such takings, families disappearing, sold in Mexican markets where slavery still thrived despite laws. "How many men?" Jesse asked, already knowing he would act. 15, maybe 20. Well-armed, experienced. Joseph stood. "I tell you this because Sarah would want me to. What you do with the knowledge is your choice." He moved toward the entrance, paused. "The daughter who keeps watch, she has the spirit of these mountains in her. Do not waste such a gift." Then he was gone, vanishing into the snow as completely as smoke. Silence stretched until Billy broke it. "We can't take on Sandoval's bunch. Not with Jesse hurt, not outnumbered 5-1. Can't let him take those girls across the border either." Tom countered. "You know what happens then. I know what happens to us if we try playing hero. We die." They argued, but Clara watched Jesse. He sat still, holding the medicine pouch, wrestling with mathematics of conscience. Finally, he spoke. "We'll hit them at dawn. Canyon narrows at the south end. Good ambush spot. Billy, you're our best shot. Find high ground. Tom, you'll come with me from the east. Hit hard. Hit fast. Scatter their horses." "That's suicide," Billy protested. "That's the job." Jesse's voice carried finality. "You want to ride on. I understand. No shame in choosing to live." "And the posse?" Tom asked. "One problem at a time." "I'm coming," Clara said. 3 heads turned to her. Jesse started to speak, but she cut him off. "Those girls, how old?" Tom answered reluctantly. "Heard the oldest is maybe 15. Then I'm coming." She met Jesse's eyes. "You gave me freedom to choose. This is my choice." "Clara, you think I can't fight? I've kept watch. I've ridden these trails. I've proven I'm not some delicate flower. Those girls need help. I won't sit here safe while—" She stopped, hearing her mother's voice in her head, speaking of duty and courage. "I won't be the kind of person who could sit here safe." Jesse studied her long, then nodded. Joseph was right. You have the spirit of these mountains. He began checking his weapons. We leave before dawn. Everyone get what rest you can. But rest proved elusive. Clara lay in her blankets, listening to the storm's dying voice, thinking of two girls somewhere in the cold, frightened and far from home. She thought of her own captivity, how different it had been, how Jesse had made her a guest rather than a prisoner. Not all cages were the same. When Jesse touched her shoulder hours later, she was already awake. They prepared in silence, checking weapons, tightening saddles. The storm had passed, leaving a world transformed in white. First light painted the peaks rose and gold, beautiful and indifferent to human struggles below. As they mounted, Jessie caught her stirrup again. "Stay close. If things go bad, things are already bad," she interrupted. "For those girls, for their family, we're trying to make them better." He smiled then, the expression transforming his face. "Sarah would have liked you." They rode out into the dawn, 4 against 20, conscience against odds. Clara didn't know if they'd survive the day, but she knew, with certainty that surprised her, that this was right. Some cages deserved breaking, no matter the cost. The mountains watched them go, eternal and patient, keeping their own counsel about the courage of mortals who dared challenge the strong for the sake of the innocent. In years to come, men would speak of the Battle of Skeleton Canyon, how Jesse Blackthorn's gang struck like lightning from the snow. But in this moment, it was just 4 people choosing to stand when kneeling would have been safer. Clara rode toward gunfire and possibly death, and had never felt more alive. The Baron's daughter was gone, left somewhere between a mansion's walls and a Wikiup's shelter. In her place rode someone new, someone who chose her own battles, her own causes, her own definitions of honor. The cage had not just opened. It had shattered completely, leaving only the vast frontier of possibility. The attack on Skeleton Canyon became legend. But survival came first. They'd scattered Sandoval's men, freed the Murphy family, but paid in blood. Tom nursed a bullet graze across his shoulder. Billy's left hand was burned from a too-hot rifle barrel. And Jesse had torn his wound open again, though he'd stayed in the saddle through sheer will. Now, a week later, they sheltered in the Apache camp as the first real storm of winter rolled in. The rescued family had been guided to safety by Joseph's people, but the cost of heroics lingered. The posse still hunted them, joined now by Sandoval's survivors seeking revenge. Clara sat beside Jesse in the Wikiup, watching firelight play across his face. The fever had returned twice, each time leaving him weaker. Joseph's medicine helped, but rest was what he truly needed. Rest they couldn't afford. "You're staring," Jesse said without opening his eyes. "You're dying," she replied, matching his directness. "We're all dying, just a matter of speed." But he opened his eyes, finding hers. "I'll last long enough." "For what?" "To see you safe, somewhere away from all this." "And if I don't want to be safe?" He smiled, the expression carved thin by pain. "Then you're a fool, beautiful one, though." The wind howled outside, driving snow horizontal. In this moment, wrapped in fur and firelight, the world shrunk to just them. Clara had helped the men for days, hunting, keeping watch, tending wounds. But the quiet moments were reserved for Jesse, these conversations that danced around truths neither quite dared speak. "Tell me about after," she said. "After the war, after Sarah. How did you become this?" Jesse shifted, accepting the tea she offered. "You ever try to go back to normal after everything's changed? I went to what was left of our farm. Neighbors looked at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was. Confederate soldier in occupied Virginia. Might as well have worn a sign saying, 'Enemy.' So you went west?" "Drifted. Tried honest work, cattle drives, railroad camps. But honest work doesn't pay much when you're starting from nothing. First robbery was almost an accident. Stage driver was boasting about the payroll he carried, how it was going to some carpetbagger who'd bought up burned farms for pennies." He shrugged. Seemed like the money should go to better use. And it escalated from there, like rolling downhill. Once you're outside the law, might as well make it worth the hanging. His eyes found hers again. What about you? What made Baron Ashford's daughter ready to shoot it out with Comancheros? Clara considered the question. I think I was always ready, just needed permission. She traced patterns in the dirt floor. My mother died when I was 12. Horse threw her on a ride my father had forbidden. He never forgave her for disobeying, even in death. That why he keeps you caged? That, and I'm valuable. Good bloodlines. He likes to say, like I'm one of his horses. The bitterness crept in despite her efforts. Mother used to tell me stories about her grandmother, a woman who came west in the early days, fought Indians, built a homestead with her bare hands. Strong women run in our blood, she'd say. She was right. Father disagreed, spent 10 years trying to breed it out of me. Tutors, finishing school, endless lessons on being a proper lady. She smiled sharp. All it did was teach me to hide better. Not that well. I saw through it first time we met, because you were looking, really looking. She met his gaze steady. No one else ever bothered. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibilities. Then Tom burst through the entrance, bringing cold and urgency. Riders coming up from the south, maybe 6, moving careful. Jesse tried to rise, Clara and Tom both stopping him. I can fight. You can barely stand, Clara said firmly. Tom, how long? Hour, maybe less. Snow's slowing them, but they know we're here somewhere. Could be hunters, Billy suggested without conviction. Could be. Tom's expression said otherwise. But they're spreading out, searching pattern. That's posse behavior. Jesse managed to sit up despite their protests. We split up. Better chance some make it out. No. Clara surprised herself with the firmness. We've been running defensive, letting them chase us. Time to change the game. What do you have in mind? Tom asked. She thought of her father's tactical books, stolen readings when he thought her safely embroidering. They expect us to run or ford up. What if we don't? What if one person goes down to meet them? That's suicide, Billy protested. Not if it's the right person. Clara stood, mind racing. They're looking for Jesse Blackthorne and his gang. What if they find Baron Ashford's daughter instead? Escaped from her captors, lost in the storm, desperate for rescue. Understanding dawned on Jesse's face. No. Yes. She was already moving, gathering what she needed. I ride down, play the hysteric woman, while they're dealing with me. You 3 slip out the back way. They'll need to take me to safety. That's at least a day's ride. Gives you time to disappear. Clara, she rounded on Jesse. You saved those girls. Let me save you. This is different. Your father will be so relieved to have his property back. He'll probably forget to punish me. And Whitmore will still want his merger. The words tasted like ashes, but she forced them out. I'll be the tragic victim, kidnapped by outlaws. They'll probably write penny dreadfuls about it. You go back to that life, it'll kill you. Jesse's voice was raw. Maybe not your body, but everything that makes you who you are. Better than watching you die here. She knelt beside him, taking his hands. They were rough, calloused, steady despite his weakness. You gave me freedom. Jesse, let me use it to choose this. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. She squeezed his hands, memorizing their warmth. Sometimes freedom means choosing the cage that saves the people who matter. His hands tightened on hers. You matter too. Then remember me, not as the Baron's daughter or Whitmore's bride, but as Clara who rode with Jesse Blackthorne, who fought Comancheros and saved children and learned what it meant to be truly alive. Her voice caught. Can you do that? Clara. But whatever he might have said was lost as Tom called another warning. The riders were closer. She stood, suddenly all business. I'll need to look the part. Torn dress, evidence of struggle. She looked at Billy. Hit me. What? No. My face needs to show evidence of captivity. Do it! Billy looked helplessly at Jesse, who closed his eyes in pain deeper than physical. Do what she asks. The blow, when it came, was careful but sufficient. Clara's cheek bloomed red. Her lips split. She tore her dress strategically, dirtied her hair. In minutes, she transformed from capable woman to tragic victim. "My horse? Take Tempest," Jessie said quietly. "She's yours anyway. Always was." Clara moved to the entrance, paused. So much to say, no time to say it. "That first day, in the canyon, you said you were looking for silence. I hope you find it." "I did." His eyes held hers. "For a while?" She couldn't respond to that, couldn't acknowledge what lay beneath the words. Instead, she pushed out into the storm, Tom helping her saddle Tempest. The mare, sensing urgency, stood steady despite the wind. "You sure about this?" Tom asked. "Take care of him," was all she said. Then she was riding, down toward the searchers, toward her old life, away from everything that had come to matter. Behind her, 3 outlaws prepared their escape. Ahead, salvation and damnation wore the same face. When the posse found her, she was everything they expected. Hysterical, confused, sobbing with relief. She spun a tale of escape during the canyon fight, of days lost in the mountains, of terror and cold. They believed because they wanted to believe, because a woman couldn't possibly be anything more than what she appeared. As they wrapped her in blankets and turned toward civilization, Clara allowed herself one look back. The mountains stood eternal, keeping their secrets. Somewhere in those peaks, 3 men were vanishing into legend. Somewhere, Jessie Blackthorne carried her memory as she carried his. The storm closed in, erasing tracks and trails, hiding both escape and return. Clara rode back toward her cage, but she was no longer the woman who had fled it. That woman had died somewhere between a cave's silence and a gunfight's thunder, between a gentle outlaw's hands and her own fierce choices. What returned was someone else, someone who knew the taste of freedom and the price of love. Someone who would survive the cage because she had learned to live beyond its bars. The Baron's daughter was coming home. But Clara, who rode with Jessie Blackthorne, would live forever in the mountains, in the whisper of wind through canyon walls, in the silence between heartbeats where truth lived. The posse celebrated their rescue of Baron Ashford's daughter. They never noticed the woman who watched the mountains until they faded from view, who touched her split lip like a talisman, who carried revolution in her heart and goodbye in her eyes. Freedom, Jessie had taught her, was about choosing. Clara had made her choice. Now she would live with it, one heartbeat at a time, until the mountains called her home again. The mansion felt like a tomb decorated for the living. 2 months had passed since Clara's rescue. 2 months of playing the traumatized daughter, the grateful survivor. Her father had stationed guards at every door, claiming protection but meaning imprisonment. Whitmore visited daily, his presence a reminder that her wedding had been postponed, not canceled. Clara stood at her window, the same window where this journey began, watching the desert. Her face had healed, leaving no mark of Billy's careful blow, but other wounds festered beneath silk and propriety. She'd heard nothing of Jessie, though she'd searched every newspaper for word of his capture or death. The silence might mean safety or grave. Both possibilities haunted her nights. "Miss Clara?" Martha entered, carrying a tea tray that rattled with her nervousness. "Your father requests your presence in the study. Mr. Whitmore has arrived with special guests." Special guests meant either business associates or law enforcement. Clara smoothed her dove-gray dress, mourning colors for the woman she'd been, and descended to face whatever new torment awaited. The study reeked of cigar smoke and satisfaction. Her father sat behind his massive desk like a king granting audience. Whitmore occupied one leather chair, but it was the other 2 men who made Clara's blood chill. She recognized the federal marshal's badge, the Pinkerton detective's calculating eyes. "Ah, Clara." Her father's voice held false warmth. "Marshal Brennan and Mr. Horn have news regarding your captors." She took the offered chair, hands folded to hide their trembling. "Oh, Jessie Blackthorne's gang robbed a Wells Fargo shipment last week," Marshal Brennan said, watching her closely. "Killed 2 guards. We believe they're heading back to this area." Why would they return? Clara kept her voice steady. Traumatized victim rather than concerned ally. Unfinished business? Perhaps. The Pinkerton horn smiled thin. Or maybe they left something behind. Someone. The threat hung unsubtle. Clara widened her eyes in practiced fear. Surely they wouldn't. I mean, after what happened. Exactly why we're increasing security, Whitmore interjected, leaning forward. In fact, I've suggested to your father that we move the wedding forward. A married woman, safely relocated to my compound, would be much harder to kidnap. Next week, her father announced. The arrangements are already in motion. Clara's world tilted. Next week, but no arguments. Baron Ashford's tone brooked no discussion. You've been through enough. Time to put this unpleasantness behind us. Speaking of which, Horn produced a photograph from his coat. We need you to confirm some identities. Miss Ashford, for the wanted posters. The image was blurry but unmistakable. Jessie, caught in profile during some raid, even in poor quality. She could see the determined set of his jaw, the way he sat his horse like he was born to it. That's him, she whispered, letting her voice shake. The leader. And these men? More photographs, Tom, Billy, others she didn't recognize. She identified who she could, hating each word. But refusal would raise suspicions, might lead to closer questioning about her time in the mountains. She played her role perfect, the violated daughter eager to see justice done. One more thing, Brennan said as they prepared to leave. We've had reports of a woman riding with Blackthorn's gang during the Skeleton Canyon raid. Young, auburn hair, excellent horsewoman. You wouldn't know anything about that. Clara's heart hammered, but she'd learned to lie from a master, her father. A woman? How scandalous. Though, she let calculation enter her voice. There was a Mexican woman who brought them food sometimes. Coarse creature. Perhaps that's who was seen. The men exchanged glances, apparently satisfied. After they left, her father turned his cold eyes on her. You'll spend this week preparing for your wedding. No rides, no visitors except those I approve. Martha will sleep in your room to prevent any lapses in judgment. I'm not a child. Father, no. You're an investment that's already caused me considerable loss. The wedding will recoup some value. But don't test me further. He stood, looming over her. Whitmore is being generous, considering your adventures. Another man might wonder about damaged goods. Clara bit her tongue until it bled, tasting copper and rage. When dismissed, she climbed to her room with measured steps, collapsed only when the door closed behind her. Martha waited, wringing her hands. Oh, child, I'm so sorry. Are you? Clara studied the older woman. Sorry enough to help. What do you mean? I mean I need to send a message, tonight. Clara moved to her writing desk, pulled out paper. One letter. That's all I ask. Martha's face crumpled. Your father would dismiss me. I've nowhere else to go. I know. Clara's pen moved quick across paper, encoding her message in references only Jessie would understand. Byron's poetry. Mentions of silence and storms. But some cages are worse than others. You taught me that. All those years of small rebellions. She folded the letter, sealed it with wax. On the outside, she wrote only, J.B. General Delivery, Tucson. Martha took the letter with shaking hands. If they catch me, they won't. Clara gripped the older woman's shoulders. You're just a servant posting a letter for your mistress. A farewell to a distant cousin. Nothing more. That night, Clara lay awake despite Martha's presence, planning. The letter might never reach Jessie, might arrive too late, but she'd learned in the mountains that action mattered more than hope. She would not go gentle to Whitmore's bed. 3 days later, her world exploded. It started with gunfire at dawn, guards shouting alarm. Clara rushed to her window to see riders sweeping in from 3 directions, moving with military precision through pre-dawn darkness. Her father's men, caught off guard, scrambled for positions. Get away from there! Martha pulled her back as windows shattered. But Clara had seen what she needed. Tom's distinctive hat. Billy's roan horse. They'd come. Against all odds and sanity. They'd come. The battle raged fierce. Her father's guards were well armed but soft from easy duty. The outlaws fought like men with nothing to lose, everything to gain. Clara watched for Jesse, finally spotting him near the stables, directing the assault with deadly efficiency. "The study," she told Martha. "Father will fort up in the study. It's the most defensible room." Sure enough, she heard her father's voice booming orders. Whitmore's higher pitch threading through. The guards were falling back, consolidating. Soon they'd make a stand that could last hours, long enough for reinforcements to arrive from town. Clara made her choice. "Bar the door behind me," she told Martha, then slipped into the hallway. The house was chaos, servants fleeing, guards running to positions. She made it to her father's gun cabinet, used the key she'd stolen months ago. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, right in a way silk never did. She reached the study as the last guard squeezed inside. Through the closing door, she saw her father and Whitmore, Marshal Brennan bleeding from a scalp wound. Then the door slammed, bars dropping into place. Outside, the gunfire slowed. Standoff. Jesse's men held the grounds but couldn't breach the study. Time favored the defenders. Unless... Clara knew every secret of this house, including the servants' panel that connected the study to the library, installed so maids could clean without disturbing the Baron's business. She slipped through shadows, found the hidden latch. The panel opened silent on oiled hinges. Inside, she could hear her father planning, so confident in his fortress. She stepped through, rifle raised. "Nobody move!" Every head swiveled. Her father's face went from shock to rage to something like fear. Whitmore actually stepped behind a chair. "Clara!" Baron Ashford found his voice. "What are you doing?" "Choosing." She kept the rifle steady. "Marshal, please remove your weapons. Slowly." "Miss Ashford," Brennan tried reason. "You're confused, traumatized. Put down the gun and..." "I've never been less confused." She clicked back the hammer. "Weapons, now." They complied. Even her father. Amazing how a loaded rifle clarified situations. Clara kicked the guns aside, then called out, "Jesse, the study's clear! Clara, no!" Her father started forward, stopped when the rifle swung his way. "You don't understand what you're doing. That man is using you, manipulating your feminine nature." "My feminine nature?" She laughed, wild and free. "You mean the part that shoots straight and rides hard? The part that chooses freedom over fortune?" The barred door shuddered under impact. 2 more hits and it burst open. Jesse filling the door frame like vengeance personified. His eyes found hers first, checking for harm, then swept the room's occupants. "Gentlemen," he said pleasant, "nice of you to gather in one place." Tom and Billy followed. Guns drawn. Other outlaws Clara didn't recognize secured the hallway. The battle was over. Won from inside by a woman who'd learned that sometimes the cage must be broken from within. "The safe," Jesse told Tom, but his eyes stayed on Clara. "Miss Ashford, might I have a word?" She followed him to the corner, aware of her father's burning gaze. Jesse looked older, worn by weeks of running, but his eyes held the same dark fire she remembered. "You got my letter," she said simply. "Byron and bullets. Interesting combination." His voice dropped private. "You sure about this? There's no going back." "There never was." She glanced at her father. Whitmore, the life they represented. "I tried to be her again, the Baron's daughter, but she's dead. Jessie died somewhere between your cave and my choice to stay. I can't resurrect her." "Then what? Then I live as who I am." She met his eyes straight. "If you'll have me." Something shifted in his face. Wonder, maybe, or recognition. "Have you, Clara? I'd follow you into hell itself." "Good." She smiled sharp. "Because that's where we're headed if we don't move. Reinforcements. Already handled. Billy set some strategic fires in town, drew them off." He touched her face, gentle where Billy had struck. "We've got maybe an hour before they regroup." Tom had the safe open. was loading bags with practiced efficiency. Clara watched her father's fortune disappear into saddlebags, felt nothing but satisfaction. Blood money, built on others' sweat and sorrow. "You're dead to me," Baron Ashford snarled. "You hear me? Dead. No daughter of mine would... No daughter of yours would be free." Clara finished. "You're right. I'm not your daughter. Haven't been since the day you decided I was property to trade." She turned to Whitmore, who pressed against the wall like he could disappear. "Samuel, still want that merger? I'm sure Father has other assets to trade. Maybe some cattle? They're about as romantic as you deserve." Jessie touched her arm. "Time to go." Clara took one last look around the study, at the books she'd stolen knowledge from, the desk where her sale had been negotiated, the men who'd tried to shape her into something small and manageable. Then she followed Jessie out, into the dawn, into whatever came next. They gave her Tom's spare horse, her own Tempest having been sold by her father for spite. As they prepared to ride, Jessie swung close. "That poetry in your letter. She walks in beauty, like the night," he smiled, transforming his scarred face. "Got the next line wrong, though." "Did I? You wrote of cloudless climes and starry skies, but that's not how it goes for you." He reached out, caught a strand of her hair where sunrise turned it to fire. "For you, it's of burning stars and bandits' eyes." Then they were riding, hard and fast toward the border, toward Mexico and freedom and futures unwritten. Behind them, smoke rose from strategic fires, confusion to cover their escape. Ahead, the mountains caught morning light like promises. Clara rode between outlaws, rifle across her saddle, hair streaming wild. The Baron's daughter was dead, left in that study with small men and smaller dreams. In her place rode someone mythic and true, a woman who'd chosen her own legend, her own love, her own life. The cage hadn't just opened, it had burned to ash, and from those ashes, Clara rose like a phoenix, terrible and beautiful, and finally, completely, free. The border was a river and a promise, muddy water dividing one life from another. They reached it as the sun touched the horizon, painting the Rio Grande the color of blood and gold. Behind them, dust clouds marked pursuit, federal marshals, Texas Rangers, every gun money could buy. But ahead lay Mexico, where American warrants held no power. Jesse reined up at the ford, his face etched with exhaustion and pain. The wound had never properly healed, each hard day's riding tearing it fresh. Clara saw how he gripped the saddle horn, knuckles white with effort. "This is it," he said, voice rough. "Other side of that river, we're different people." "Who will we be?" Clara asked, moving her stolen horse alongside his. "Free?" He managed a smile. "That's all that matters." Tom splashed into the shallows, testing the depth. Current strong but manageable. We cross now or never. They entered the water in single file, horses fighting the flow. Halfway across, shots rang out. The pursuit had reached the bank. Bullets whined overhead, splashing into water like deadly rain. Clara bent low, urging her mount forward, feeling time stretch eternal in those moments between countries. Then they were scrambling up the Mexican bank, horses heaving, riders soaked but alive. The shooting stopped. Even the most zealous lawman knew better than to fire across international borders. They'd made it, against all odds. They'd made it. Jesse slumped forward, and Clara saw fresh blood soaking his shirt. "Jesse." "I'm fine," he lied, even as Tom and Billy helped him from the saddle. "Just need a moment." They made camp in a grove of cottonwoods, far enough from the river to feel safe. While Tom kept watch and Billy tended horses, Clara examined Jesse's wound. What she found made her heart sink. Infection had set deep, angry red streaks spreading from the ragged flesh. "You need a doctor," she said. "No doctors." Jesse caught her hand. "They'd ask questions. Send word north. I'll heal or I won't, but I'll do it free." Clara wanted to argue, but understood. Freedom meant choosing your own fate, even if that fate was fever and infection. She did what she could with her limited supplies, but knew it wasn't enough. Jessie needed rest, medicine, time, all things they couldn't afford with pursuit so close. That night, as Jessie tossed in fever dreams, Clara made a decision. She found Tom on watch, laid out her plan. The older outlaw listened, face grave. "He won't like it," Tom said when she finished. "He doesn't have to like it. He just has to live." Clara checked the money they'd taken from her father's safe. "This is enough to buy what we need. I can be back by tomorrow night." "If you're caught in town." "I won't be." She'd already changed into the Mexican clothes they'd acquired, her hair hidden beneath a rebozo. "I'm just another woman buying supplies. No one looks twice at women." Tom studied her, this baron's daughter who'd become something else entirely. "You love him." It wasn't a question, but Clara answered anyway. "I chose him. In the cave, in my father's house, at this river. I'll keep choosing him until there are no choices left." She rode out at dawn while Jessie slept, taking the gentlest horse and a list of necessities. The nearest town was 4 hours' ride, a dusty collection of adobes catering to travelers and locals alike. Clara had never been to Mexico, but she'd learned Spanish from her mother's servants. Another small rebellion that now served her well. The marketplace bustled with morning trade. She moved through it like smoke, purchasing what they needed: medical supplies, food, ammunition. No one questioned the young woman with the sad eyes and careful Spanish. Money spoke louder than accents. She was loading her purchases when she heard the name that chilled her blood: Blackthorn. 2 vaqueros talked near the fountain, voices carrying. Clara's Spanish caught pieces: American outlaws, wounded leader, reward offered by men in black suits. The Pinkertons had crossed the border after all, not officially, but with gold that made borders meaningless. Clara finished loading with forced calm, but her mind raced. They'd have to move again, deeper into Mexico. Jessie needed rest he wouldn't get. Healing that wouldn't come on horseback. Unless... An old woman sold herbs from a blanket nearby, gnarled hands sorting medicinal plants with practiced ease. Clara approached, chose her words careful. "My husband is very sick," she said in Spanish. "A wound that won't heal. We have money, but we need somewhere quiet to rest." The woman studied her with eyes that had seen everything. "Your husband, he is the one the Americans seek?" Clara's hand found her gun, but the woman cackled. "Peace, child. I care nothing for American gold, but I remember Apache raids, and I remember who helped drive them off." She leaned close. "My son has a ranch, 2 days south, remote, quiet. He owes a debt to a gringo who saved his herd once. Perhaps that debt could be repaid." Hope flickered. Clara pressed gold into the woman's palm, received directions and a letter of introduction in return. It was a chance, nothing more, but sometimes chances were all that separated living from dying. The ride back seemed endless. Clara pushed hard, knowing every hour mattered. She found the camp in uproar, Jessie conscious but weakening. Tom and Billy arguing about whether to move him. "Stop," Clara commanded, surprising them with her tone. "I have a place, safe, quiet, 2 days' ride if we go slow," she explained while preparing the medicines she'd bought. Jessie tried to protest, but she cut him off. "You gave me freedom to choose," she said, cleaning his wound with alcohol that made him gasp. "Now I'm choosing to save your stubborn life. Tom, rig a travois. Billy, scout the route south. We leave in an hour." They looked at Jessie, who managed a weak smile. "Better do what she says. Boys, woman's got iron in her spine." The journey to the ranch tested them all. Jessie drifted in and out of consciousness, Clara riding beside the travois, monitoring his breathing. Tom and Billy took turns scouting, watching for pursuit that thankfully never came. Perhaps the Pinkertons focused on towns, not expecting outlaws to head deeper into Mexican wilderness. The ranch appeared like a mirage. White walls and red tiles nestled in a valley where a spring created impossible green. Dogs announced their arrival, bringing a man to the gate. He read his mother's letter, studied the travelers, particularly Jessie's fevered face. "You are the one who stopped the Apache at Skeleton Canyon. he asked in accented English. Among other things. Tom answered carefully. The rancher, Miguel Herrera, nodded slow. Then you are welcome. My mother says you need sanctuary. This I can provide. They carried Jesse to a clean room, cool and quiet. A local woman with healing knowledge came, clicking her tongue at the wound's condition but setting to work with herbs and poultices that smelled of earth and mystery. Clara never left Jesse's side, bathing his fever, forcing water between cracked lips, anchoring him to life with stubborn devotion. 3 days passed in that timeless way of sick rooms. On the 4th dawn, Jesse's fever broke. He opened clear eyes, found Clara asleep in the chair beside him, hand still clasping his. The sight seemed to break something in him, this wild woman who'd given up everything, choosing an outlaw's uncertain life over comfort's golden cage. Clara, he whispered. She woke instantly, tears starting when she saw awareness in his eyes. You're back. Never left. He squeezed her hand, weak but sure. Just took a detour through hell? You pulled me out. We pulled each other out. Miguel proved generous in his sanctuary. As Jesse healed, they helped with ranch work. Tom and Billy herding cattle. Clara helping with horses. Everyone earning their keep. It was hard work, but honest. The kind of life Jesse had tried after the war before bitterness drove him to outlawry. Weeks passed. Jesse's wound became a scar, another mark on his map of survival. News filtered in from the north. Baron Ashford had disowned his daughter publicly. Whitmore had married some railroad heiress. The hunt for Blackthorn's gang had moved west toward California. One evening, as purple shadows stretched across the valley, Jesse found Clara at the corral, watching horses graze. He moved beside her, still careful of his healing side. Tom says we could stay, he said. Miguel would hire us permanent, build a life here. Is that what you want? To disappear into another man's land? Another man's life? Jesse considered. I wanted silence. Found it here, but silence ain't the same as peace. He turned to her. What do you want? Clara had been thinking about this, about choices and futures. I want to build something. Not just hide, but create. Maybe our own ranch, our own land, somewhere we can be ourselves without apology. That's a big dream. I'm a big dreamer. She faced him full. Question is, do you dream with me? Jesse answered by kissing her. There in the fading light with horses as witness. It was their first real kiss since that desperate night in the cave, and it carried all the words they danced around, love and choice and futures intertwined. When they broke apart, he smiled that rare, true smile. South of here, there's land going cheap, too rough for most, but we're not most. Take the money from your father's safe, add what we can earn here. Might be enough to start. From outlaws to ranchers. Clara laughed. What would the newspapers say? Nothing, because we'll be different people by then. Names can change. Clara, what matters is who we choose to be. They were married a month later in the ranch's small chapel. Tom and Billy standing witness while Miguel's family celebrated these strange Americans who'd become part of their world. Clara wore a simple white dress. Jesse his cleanest shirt, no silk or ceremony. Just two people choosing each other before God and gathered friends. That night, in their small room, Jesse showed Clara the book he'd been writing in. Not stolen stories, but their own, set down in careful script. Our story, he said. So we remember who we were and why we changed. Clara traced the words, seeing their journey from that first meeting in the canyon. How does it end? It doesn't. Jesse pulled her close. That's the beauty of it. We get to keep writing, page by page, choice by choice. They left Miguel's ranch the next spring, heading south toward land and possibility. Tom and Billy came too, loyal to the end. The Baron's daughter and the outlaw were gone, replaced by ranchers with Spanish names and American dreams. Years later, when silver hair replaced auburn and dark, when children played in the courtyard of a modest but thriving ranch, Clara would sometimes find Jesse in his study, still writing their story. He'd look up, smile that remained rare and precious, And she'd know he'd found his silence at last, not in solitude, but in the quiet moments between heartbeats, where love lived. The cage had become a doorway. The doorway had led to freedom, and freedom, they'd learned, was just another word for choosing each other, again and again, until choice became as natural as breathing. Their story ended as it began, with a woman at a window, watching the horizon. But now she watched not for escape, but for her husband's return from the day's work, her children's laughter carrying on the desert wind. The walls around her were ones she'd chosen, built with her own hands, filled with love instead of locks. In the distance, mountains rose like promises kept, and Clara smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest rebellions led not to destruction but to creation of lives, of families, of futures written in defiance of what others declared destiny. She'd wanted escape. He'd wanted silence. Together, they'd found home. Thank you for joining me on this Wild West journey of love and freedom. If you enjoyed Clara and Jesse's story, I'd love to hear where you're listening from, whether it's during your commute, at home, or somewhere unexpected. Please subscribe to From Wild West for more tales of frontier romance and adventure, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and connections make these tales come alive. Until next time, keep riding toward your own horizons.